Short answer is yes, because you've already made your mind up before we even had the discussion. And if you'd like to prove me a liar, I'd love to tell you a little bit about my story. So feel free to listen. Let's start with, I didn't hear much about racism as a kid. I maybe heard about Martin Luther King Day, and that's about it growing up. The basic understanding that I've learned from both of my white parents is that they always just didn't think that they were racist. They just assumed that, like speaks to like, and that people like to be with people that are like them, which is a whole nother story and a whole nother discussion for a whole nother video. But I digress. My story. Let's rewind several years ago to Trayvon Martin. Something about that just didn't sit right with me. Something seemed so terribly wrong about that entire situation. Find out later, that was the catalyst that had the beautiful black women that started the Black Lives Matter movement. That's where that was the catalyst. Fast forward to 2020. We're all in a global pandemic. And in the United States, we start hearing stories about Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and then the murder of George Floyd happens. This is where it goes in two different directions. One, I could think about my family background history that has some substance abuse and other questionable things that have happened in my family. And so I was able to look at George Floyd and ask myself, if my father was in that situation, if somebody that I knew and loved that had that background, because I know a lot of people and love a lot of people who've had a similar background to George Floyd, how would I feel if they were treated like that? And then when I started looking at this, the idea of Black Lives Matter, and we look at names, when you Google search, there are hundreds upon hundreds of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color who have been excessively brutalized and murdered by the police in the United States of America. That's why I keep coming back to racism in America, white supremacy in America, because racism, prejudice plus power equals racism. And then you go back to it and you realize, no, it's actually talking about white supremacy. The idea that whiteness is the default, that whiteness is the standard, that somehow white is better than everything else. And if you look at our history, it's very important. You cannot ignore the history of the United States of America, because before the country was even a country, we had learned and believed these lies about race. We created this social construct so that we could other and be better than other people and belittle other people and enslave other people, and that leads to generational trauma. And you think about all these things that you learn over time and you realize, I didn't think I was racist, but racism is not the shark in the water. It's the water that we're all living in the United States of America. So because of my proximity to whiteness, I'm going to have racist tendencies that I have to deal with. So you tell me, are you racist?